part of me is Corey the therapist. Part of me is Corey that works in the NBA. Part of me is Corey that is a PhD, right? So part of me is a father. Part of me is a husband, right? So recognizing all of those parts and understanding what feeds me. What do I love about being who I am? What do I struggle with? So I think this book doesn't exclude, I don't think it's as good for that group as that. If you're an individual and you seek to better know yourself, the book will serve you.
Hey, welcome back to the Oz Shift podcast. As always, I'm your host, Anthony Trucks, and I have a guest that I'm already excited to talk to because I've already, secretly been talking to this person before we got recording. And it's interesting, we have some kindredness in terms of our perspectives on child development, we'll call it in some aspects, although I am not the one that will kind of be the one to guide this. This person's a licensed marriage and family therapist, which means they spend a lot more time with people in those conversations than I ever do. But also the big thing is like this is a person I used to have a tie like me, which is college football. And if you know me, you know that it's a big kind of part of my life, more so because I believe it's a microcosm of the real world. Interactions, hardship, difficulty, celebration, failure, all these things you navigate. And I think those lessons serve humans very, very well when they can take the intangibles and apply it to their life. And so without knowing for sure, my assumption is this person went through a journey of navigating their own ups and downs, did their whole journey. And then it came to the point of saying, let me serve others. And so today I'm praying that they serve you and me with their words. So without further ado, I'm welcome to the show, Corey Yeager, man. How are you?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm doing very well, man. I'm having a good day. My kids all went off to school. Like my wife and I were dropping my oldest off to college at the airport after dropping my twins off at 8th grade. And we're both like, all right, back to normal, I guess. So we're back in that post-summer flow.
The new normal, right? How
Man.
was it emotional? Was it emotional to drop them off?
Well, it's borderline not. Reason being is because this is his orientation. So he doesn't get dropped off to not come home for, I think, a month. Like actually about a month and like 7 days. That's when he's gone. This time it's just 48 hours. He's navigating the airport and the Uber and getting to orientation on his own. So there's a little bit of it, but it's not like he's gone yet. So it's not too emotional.
Yeah, that's right.
You've been there though.
That's good. That's good. I've been there, done that, and we're raising kids to release our kids into the world. So it's the natural progression. So best of luck.
Christian, did you cry, man? Because I don't think I'm gonna cry, but I feel like I might. I don't know. How's that go?
I did cry with my eldest just briefly. He went to play at the same junior college I played at. So there was some emotional ties for me that were reaching all the way back to my time on that campus. So I just had a brief moment and then just said, hey, it's time for him to spread his wings. Good luck to you, bub. So had a moment, but with the other boys, wasn't as emotional.
It's funny you said. I quite literally texted my son, and the text I sent him was, proud of you, dog, because that's how I say things to him. And I said, spread your wings, love you. So you saying spread your wings.
That's right.
Hey, look at that. Serendipitous already, man.
Get busy living, baby. Get busy living.
Do it. Call me if you need me, but also don't,
right.
be a man.
That's right.
So here's the first question I always ask. You take it wherever you want to take it. It's actually something that kind of opens. You could be audacious. You could be humble. Totally up to you. But here it is. I'm walking around town. I sit down in a coffee shop, sit next to you. I don't know you. For some reason, you turn and start talking to me. Why should I listen to you?
First of all, there would be no for some reason. It would be very intentional if I turned to talk to you. Something would be drawing me to speak to you.
Yeah.
Why should you talk to me? Probably because you would sense very quickly this cat may have some type of wisdom about his conversation, because I probably would quickly jump into a curiosity about your life. And so what are you up to? So what do you do, dog? It looks like you might have played ball. I would probably be curious with you, which is really what I do. That's my line of work as a therapist, is not to change anyone's life, but to be curious with people about their upbringing and their life and where they are and where they're headed. So that level of curiosity, many times, more often than not, draws people into the convo. So I think that would probably lead you to say, all right, maybe he's got some stuff there. Let's engage in this convo.
I like it. One word you said a moment ago, and I like this word because I've been learning about it recently. It's the word wisdom. I have my own perspectives on
Mm,
wisdom. What are your when someone says what is wisdom? What do you think? Because if you're going to say I'm going to
ooh,
have some wisdom to share, I'd love to talk
yeah.
about like where do you see wisdom coming from?
Yes. So my grandmother, who was died at 96 years old a few years back, had a sixth grade education, but was easily the most wise person in the world.
Mm,
And she taught me the process and the gift of my discernment. That's really kind of what I utilize in my life.
yeah.
So she taught me the difference in wisdom and knowledge. Knowledge is gaining information. We all do it all the time. We gain and get information. Wisdom is the application thereof. How
Mm,
do I take the info that I have and apply it to the benefit of myself and others around me? So it's applying the information that we get that benefits us. Because knowledge is just info on the shelf. If it's knowledge, yeah, that's great, you have it.
yep.
But if you
True.
don't utilize it, what good is it?
Hmm.
Wisdom is that application. That's how I see it.
I like.
How
You ever
you
read the
see it?
book? Was a book I read. It's called Outwitting the Devil. You ever read that one?
No.
It was recommended to me about a year ago, and it's a phenomenal read. I recommend if anybody wants to go and like get this book, listen to it on audiobook. It's Napoleon Hill. It's a very creepy book in a way that is not like devilish and demonic, but it's so in line with society. And it was written 70, 80 years ago, something like that. It's crazy. But at one point, it talks about the difference between experience, so knowledge, and wisdom, because a lot of people assume just because you know something you have wisdom. But he talks about how wisdom is seasoned experience. It's
Yes.
going through something and letting it stew and letting it process, and then all of a sudden it becomes this knowing. And I find like that wisdom is something that's sometimes hard to communicate. It's like the sense of
Mm-hmm.
knowing. I'm like, what kind of words do I got to throw at you to get what I'm saying? So I like that
Yes.
because I think that there are people who could be 30 years old that could be more wise than those who are 60 if they've spent time watching, paying attention, letting it season. Because some people, man, they do the same thing at 60 they did at 30 because they never learn,
That's
and
right.
it's crazy to watch, man. So let's go back into time a little bit because another part of the thing you said that I like, it's the curiosity part of it. Where did the curiosity come into your life? Was that a young thing? Was it an older thing? Like when did you become a curious human?
Yeah, I think I've always been curious, always been curious. And again, I'm going to have to relate this to my grandmother. She said at 10 years old, she pulled me to the side and said, "Hey, come here. I got something for you." So
Mm,
you have the gift of that same gift I have. And I said, "Granny, what is that?" It's the gift of discernment. I didn't
mm,
know what that meant. She began teaching me what discernment was. She said, "So pay attention to what people are doing. Be curious, watch. Don't tell anybody you're doing it, and see if
mm.
you can predict what's going to happen with that
Oh,
situation." So
interesting.
I've done that my whole life. So I watch people. I don't say anything. I bet
Yeah.
they are going to do this or they're going to do that, and then I just sit back and watch. And very often, man, see, it happened. My wife is now in tune with me. She always comes to me like, "So, what are your thoughts on this?"
Yeah.
Right? Because she's seen, hey, that
Mhm.
discernment stuff that he talks about works. So that curiosity has grown in my life from a young age, and I utilize it all the time,
Yeah.
absolutely all the time. So yeah,
I
I think
get it.
it serves me well.
I think I had a little bit of that too, man. I haven't
Hmm.
called it that. I don't think I've ever like spent time in it, but I will spend time. Like I'm a people watcher. I travel a lot, so I sit around and I spend. When I was a kid, I had ADHD, always in trouble. One of the things that solved the problem for me was I spent time in my own head, not talking to everybody else after a while, and so I would do the same thing. I would like kind of like watch people. So now I can like forecast what I think's going to happen with our kids, with situations at
Yeah.
school, and so I explain to my wife like, "Hey, this is what's going to happen," and at this point, I think we've got to the point where she gets what I'm like thinking. She's like, okay, she'll lean into it. It took a while for her to actually buy into what I'm saying, but it does usually
Yeah.
come out. I didn't realize it was called discernment, though. I thought it was more of like determining or understanding the differentiation. But the way you frame it, I like. It actually
And
makes more
Aunt,
sense to me.
and Aunt, what it does is other people, if you have this gift of discernment, other people won't trust it early on. Like, well, how you know that? Well, you just got
True.
lucky with that. But when you do it time in and time out, after a while, the people close to you start to say, "I benefit from your discernment." So
Hmm.
now I'm gonna pay deeper attention to how it is that you frame it, what you saw. I'm not gonna question it as much because you've honed that skill.
Yeah.
If you've been curious over your lifetime, you've sharpened that skill in a way
Hmm.
that you can utilize it. And now you not only do you benefit, but all those in your circle do.
Yeah, that's big. Because I mean,
Yeah,
if they're willing to listen to you, how do you handle the people that are close to you that don't listen though? Because you and I both know there's some people that are just too close
yeah.
to hear you. How do you navigate that? Is it an age thing? Is it a time thing? Because There are people that I sit real close when I go, if you would just do this, but it's almost like I can't listen to Ant because he's Ant. Like, how do you get those other side of the coin to buy in?
Yeah, I think I've settled on saying that's not my job to convince you to do it or not do it or listen to me or not listen to me. I'm going to
Mm,
give you my version. I'm going to give you my thoughts on something. You do whatever you want with it. You choose. What if
mhm.
you choose to say, "Yeah, I don't care." That's your call. And then
Yeah,
we'll both watch the situation, and then you'll look at me like, "Man, he was right. That was right."
yeah,
Oh man. So maybe I do want to pay more closer attention to what he's saying as we move forward. But once again, that's their call. It's not
true.
my job to force it.
Yeah. I tell people I think it's sometimes our job to plant the seed but not water it. So I just
That's
sit
right.
back. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I'm always curious about that with people like yourself who are in places where you give advice and you guide. So let's go to the point where I want to make sure we close the gap before we kind of do the deeper things. So you play football, and obviously that ended at some point. Did for me, it's the nature of the game, and now you are down the road, a pretty far way of being great at the work you do. How did you get into this kind of work? How did you get into the point of going like I want to be a marriage and family therapist?
Yeah, so circuitous route. I went to Long Beach State, played football. Thought I was going to be a multimillionaire offensive guard in the NFL. So
Mm,
thought, hey, there's no point going to class. Why would you go to class every day if you know you're already, I'm going to make millions? So what's the point? Just
yeah,
stay eligible for 4 years. I did
yeah,
that. And then when it didn't work out, I had no degree. I had really nothing to fall back on. So it's kind of
mm,
lost.
yeah,
Alcohol became a great friend of mine. We got
mm,
along very well for quite a number of years after football ended. But then I
mm,
met my wife, and she saw something in me that I hadn't seen. It
mm,
was deep down, and she kept drawing it out of me. Hey, go back to school. The boys need to know that we both have our degree.
yeah,
So I kind of followed her lead. I went back to school and fell in love with the academic realm. So ended
mm,
up getting my degree in psychology. Then went back to school and got my master's, and then ultimately got my PhD at the University of Minnesota. So kind of fell in
awesome.
love with that route. And in the meanwhile, as I got that master's degree, I became a therapist and really, really deeply fell in love with that therapeutic venture, engaging
Mm,
and supporting others, especially young black males who had
yeah,
some shared experience that I did. So that is really what drew me into it. And it sustains me because I want to be in the helping space. I want to be in the helping profession. So it draws me near to people. I get to hear their
mm,
stories. I get to give feedback. And once again, like we said a moment ago, people do whatever they choose with it.
yeah.
So,
That's big, man. And it's a needed area. I think if I'm being honest, I think one of the greatest things that like hurts my heart is like we don't have the same. I don't even call it the American family, like the nuclear family we used to have. This whatever country you're in, I think this thing is pulling apart at the seams, and it's tough because you don't see it. I think in day to day all the time. My neighbors are great, they got dialed in, but it's like you to see the media like press in to kind of create this separation, and I even think government systems are set up to have people not be. It's weird, like not be married because you can get more child support and stuff or more services if you're not. So I know people who are like they live together, but they're not married on purpose. So it's a big, deep conversation. We don't got to go there, but would love to know your thoughts on like what's the state of the world's family base right now.
I think it's ever shifting and ever evolving. So if the state of the family and how we see it is evolving, if we
Yeah.
have the same mindset that we had 40 years ago, we're going to miss a lot. So we have to evolve our thinking along with the family.
Hmm.
The family by choice is something that no one really talked about 40, 50 years ago. But if I
Yeah. Yeah.
choose to have you as my brother, that
Hmm.
is just as strong a bond as if you were biologically connected to me, if not stronger, because I chose you as my
Yeah.
brother. So this shift, this movement, this evolution of the family begs for us to evolve our thinking with it as well. And
Mm.
if we see the importance of the nuclear family as a family unit or from our upbringing, that's pretty cool. Others may not see it that way. Which one is right?
Sure.
Yeah, both are
Yeah.
right. Right. So
Hmm.
I speak about this a lot, Anthony. There is no normal when you talk about family.
It's
Across
true.
family, there is no such thing as normal. There is only normal
Mm.
within the family. If you start to compare families, you'll say, well, that's not normal.
Yeah.
So,
Everybody. Yeah. I know what you
yes.
mean.
So, if we can have the frame of understanding, the most important family is my family. And
Yeah.
if I can finalize and understand what the norm is for us, I don't have to worry about comparing us to everybody else. It's not my
Mm.
job. right? So I want my unit to understand how we operate. And if we can get that done, that's all it begs for. It doesn't tell me every other family should get down this way. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
very
think
true.
I think it's an argument that we have, but I think the evolution of the family continues. Are we going to evolve with it?
Yeah,
Have we?
it's
I don't
changed.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. And it has changed, man. It's funny. It's my best friend in the world, man. He's got a unique family that's different from mine. I love his family. I love what he does, but he leaks. We're crazy. My wife and I, like we, not ourselves, but we're big on like physical. Like we're family as athletes, and we work hard. And we serve. Like we're people of faith. And so there's a base that's separate from his. And I sit back and I go, we're all supposed to have this. The world would be boring if we were all the same. But
Yeah.
it is most definitely. There's no normal. There's no definitive. And I asked that question because I wanted to lead into a question that I think when we look at that, there's no normal family. There's no normal base, right? Well, all families are made up of individuals. And so I'd love to dive today into where I was wanting to go. It's like you have this book that's about how are you, like how the individual is. And how do the individuals affect the collective family, right? If the family's evolving, right? Like you said, are we evolving? Where does that conversation start for you?
I think it really starts in the concept that the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So
Mm,
the sum of its parts, those individuals are critically important. So in my book, How Am I Doing? I talk about the individual better understanding themselves. And if the individual, Anthony, if you better understand yourself, you become a better husband, you
yeah.
become a better father, a better friend. So the understanding and curiosity that we must have with the individual, or that we should have with the individual, serves the greater whole, right? So I think
Hmm.
there's a both and approach here. Those individuals critically important. Make sure you understand yourself. But then, just like being on a football team, I played O line, which is the position that you better be down with your the other four starters, because we got
Yeah.
to zone block this, and I got to know that you're going to pick that up when I go up to the backer.
Good job.
So
Hmm.
the individual really important, but that whole line moving together in zone in unison much more important than that individual. But it doesn't
I like that.
diminish the importance of the individual either. Doesn't diminish it.
Yeah.
But I know I have to lose some of my individuality to blend in with part of that family, with part of that offensive line, because we're on a mission all together. We have the same agenda and mission. I think one of the struggles, Anthony, is too often there's multiple agendas, competing agendas. The
Hmm.
right tackle says, "Man, I was honorable mention last year. I need to be first team, so I need
Yeah.
pancakes." Yeah, but that means you're
Hmm.
gonna get stuck trying to pancake him, and you should have got up to the backer. So
Hmm.
how do we serve ourselves individually while serving the whole? It's a complex space,
It
but
is.
critically important.
Oh, I would agree, man. I think there's because I mean you don't know my story. We just literally just met today, and
Hmm.
like I went through a journey of football, and but afterwards, my wife and I were high school sweethearts, got married, got divorced after we were home from the NFL, and everything went crazy. And then there was a point in time when like I had this really interesting like moment of looking in a mirror at like 34, 33, 34, and I was like, I don't like you, man. Like you got to figure this out. And I realized I was the common denominator to all my problems.
Yeah.
Part of the marriage, part of being a bad parent, my business wasn't doing very well. A lot of it was all tied to Anthony. And at that moment, I was like, what, why? And I started digging. And the more I dug, I realized that there are areas I needed to improve. Like you said, I had to find myself. And I went through my own kind of navigational journey. But now I'm very big on my marriage may need things that I have to give. Not that my wife needs, right? Not that my kids need, but my marriage is an entity to me that's a
Hmm.
whole
Yeah.
that may need me to give it, or I may want something from it that I have to give.
Hmm.
It's a weird dynamic, but I think you understand it. And I think for me, like that's kind of the thing where I spend time thinking about how to do that. So for you saying, know yourself, how does somebody come to get to know themselves or figure that whole journey out of who are you?
Just like getting to know another individual. Well, how do you get to know someone else? You have to spend time with them. You have to spend time with
Mm-hmm.
those people. You learn their quirks, you learn what they
Yeah.
like, where you blend with them, where you not don't blend with them. All of that. It's spending time with those individuals to get to know them. Knowing the
Mm-hmm.
self is quite similar. I have to spend time with myself to know me. I say it to my wife and my kids and everybody in my life all the time. Before I can be a good husband, before I can be a good dad, I have to be a good Corey for Corey first, before any of
Mm-hmm.
that. So, working to understand myself, becoming aware of how I see the world, how I develop the value system that I move with is critically important because too often we get value systems implanted in us and we don't question them for the rest of our life. We just say, that's how I see it. Yeah, but now that's
Hmm.
how you saw it when you were 15 because your parents gave you that. Now you're 37,
Hmm.
52, and you're thinking the same way and you haven't been curious with yourself at all. So leaning in to better understand and be curious with who we are, how we came to be who we are, is really important. It does a great job of serving us in those relationships with others if we can do better with ourselves.
Yeah, I agree, man. Because if you can't figure yourself out, it's gonna be hard to figure somebody else out, and then they can't figure you out
Mm-hmm.
either. That's the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing of like, yeah, just if you don't know you, you can't. Nobody can know you.
That's
So,
right.
so how does somebody do it? We get the what, right? So what is?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is there a process that's the same for most people, or at least similar to most? Is it
Yeah.
asking questions? Because I know for me, it took a lot of me sitting, cutting the rest of the world out, no more distractions,
Yeah.
and spending time asking questions that were hard to answer when I answered them honestly from my gut. And now, long journey past that, I remarried my ex-wife. We have an amazing marriage. We got this solid base, right? But that was necessary. It was paramount. If I didn't do that, I'm not having what I have now. So, what is in your journey of doing this with so many people? What has been that journey for most people? Is it asking the questions? Is it getting other people to give them feedback? Like, what does that look
Yeah,
like?
I think it's all of what you described, but I do believe to get to know the self, the individual that we are, that taking time in the mirror, and this may sound silly, but even just standing in the mirror, I literally began a journey of saying, I'm gonna check in with myself in the mirror because I can't avoid
Hmm.
what Corey may or may not want or what he's looking or thinking. I stand in the mirror and converse with myself. All right, Corey, now you've told everybody else that you were about this and they believe you, but you know deep down you're not really about that. So what are you gonna do with
Hmm.
that? Is that how you want to move in the world that you want to tell everybody else one story, but you don't really move that way? So being in the mirror, you can imagine that turns into a full blown conversation.
It
Yeah,
does,
Corey,
man. It
that's
really
hey
does.
Corey, you told everybody yesterday, blah blah blah. Yeah, that is some BS. Now what are we gonna do? Are we gonna keep because sometimes to be honest, I say, but we're gonna keep moving with that BS though. That's what we're gonna do right now. I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
moving
and
with
just keep
that
going.
BS right now because I'm not ready to change it. I don't have the energy for it. But I've now checked myself. I'm aware it's not below consciousness. I'm aware that I'm doing it, and I will come back to that. And I even say, promise myself, hey, we're gonna address that. Man, I'm not gonna do it right now, but I'm gonna address that. And it holds myself
Hmm.
accountable. So that mirror work
Yeah.
is critically important.
How do you balance that with being, self-deprecating? Like there's a level I think that for me football was maybe it helped you too is after a while I understood like there was being self-critical and then self-deprecating. Like self-critical is like, hey, you got to work on this. Like, it's not that great, but then to be self-deprecating is like you suck. It leads to shame, leads to guilt, right? How does somebody balance that? Because if I'm looking at go, hey, this is my life, man, I'm responsible for some of this stuff. Even if it's a passive way, like I allowed this or I created, like, oh, how do I go? I can work on it as opposed to you don't deserve anything great. Look what
Yeah,
you've
I
done.
think this self-deprecating is a space that serves us best with others. I'm self-deprecating
Hmm.
with people all the time, all the time, and
Yeah.
I think it's a move to be one down with people. It
Hmm.
diminishes us on purpose. I seek to diminish myself in this conversation with you because I want to be one down. Because if we're one down, then others will engage. Like, yeah, he doesn't see himself as too much or as bigger than what he is, and
Hmm.
all of those things. And I think that move is an important move with others. It may, I
Hmm.
don't know deeply how important it is with ourselves. It may be, but this investigative side of ourselves, that individualized self-investigation, to me is the most critical. I use that self-deprecation with others. I don't necessarily use it with myself. I don't look in the mirror and
Hmm.
really go at myself because I say this all the time, Anthony. The world is full of people that will line up against you. Why would you join that
Yeah.
line with them? There's too many people
True.
lined up to come at you. I'm not going to join you to come at myself. So I'm
Yeah.
working with myself. I'm not going to be self-deprecating with me. I'll do it with others, but not with myself.
Hmm.
Be real with me. I know there's things
Hmm.
that I need to work on, but I'm not going to attack myself. So that's how
Yeah.
I see it.
I like it. It's a good way of stating it. Because yeah, because at the end of the day, if you join the crowd, man, it's going to be hard to climb against
Yes.
yourself. We have that internal little voice, and then all of it, I think, for me, boils down to like action. I think at some point you have to take steps in a direction towards something. What becomes somebody's what should become their motivation? Is it because they're mad at this? Is it, okay? There's always that conversation of why, and I'm going down pathways, and I want to come back to something later, but like there's the why, and then there's the the why that's a heartfelt pull, and one that's like oh, I don't want to be here anymore,
Mm,
right? So for me, like part of my why is like I grew up in poor and in foster care in a weird situation. I don't want to experience that, nor do I want my kids to, as opposed to I want to be the greatest in the world, right? It's a different kind of why. Which one, I guess, drives you, and then also which one do you think is more beneficial for folks, or does it not matter?
I think I'm driven in that individual aspect to be the best version of who I am today. And
Yeah.
that'll be different than who I was yesterday. And it damn well better be
Mhm.
different than who I am tomorrow. Because if it's not, it means I didn't grow.
Yeah.
It means I didn't grow.
True.
I say it all the time about football.
Mhm.
There's no point to step on the field and not come off that field better than you stepped on. Then you wasted a day. Had
Yeah.
to be out here in 2 days and practice, and I didn't get better. So you could have just not even went
Mhm.
to practice and took the lashes for that. So if we're not better today than we were yesterday, and tomorrow getting better than we were today, there is no point. So I'm driven to be a better version of myself every single day. Now that's connected
Mhm.
to what my upbringing, how people taught me and brought me up. But I also understand now that the way I was brought up, I can be curious and question and push back against some of that. There's things that I was brought up to see in ways to see the world that I don't agree with anymore. And that's hard to
Yeah.
say because if I turn to my
Mhm.
mom and say, yeah, but I don't believe that anymore, that can be a strike to her. She can take that personal. But it's not personal.
I
Like,
get that.
mom, I love you. I just don't see it that way. My experience in the world is
Yeah.
different than what you had. You brought me up with what you had. Now mine's different. So
Mhm.
I'm moving in a different way. And it's not about me coming at you.
Yeah.
So that's how I
Mhm.
differentiate the two.
That's a good one. That's a whole different box that we got to unpack. Because my son's going off to college now, and I'm telling him like, "Hey, here's my family. Here's our family's, thoughts, values, and principles." But I do realize values and principles are separate from like core beliefs and everything. And while we have a belief for our family, you're going to go off and be around different environments, different people, different places, and do know that if you have a different thought, like it's going to be okay to share it. I'll still
Mhm.
love you. Like that's just that. So that's like it's funny. These are conversations that I'm currently having that you're
Mhm.
unpacking because it makes me feel a little bit validated in the discussions because like I don't want him to be like, oh, I can't go tell dad this
Yeah,
thing. Like I'd prefer to have I mean, I believe in your belief, but just because I don't believe your belief doesn't mean I believe in you as a human or that I don't
that's
love you as a
right.
human, right? It's two
That's
separate
right.
pieces. So, this is where I want to go towards what is actually your book. How am I doing? Because what you're talking about is this aspect of you. Like I'm going to unpack me, do me, right? And that kind of aspect. And this book's really about discovering your purpose, honoring your personal story, and exploring who it is you as a human want to be. So this is kind of something where I think could be a huge conversation. But I'd really like to know, I guess, what prompted you to write this book, and who is the book genuinely for?
So I think the book is for anywhere from a kid that's 13, 14, 15 years old can grasp the concepts because I wrote it in a way that a young person can get a hold of something there throughout the
Good.
lifespan. It can be served all the way throughout the lifespan. But
Mhm.
I think that really what this was inspired by is I did a documentary with DeMar DeRozan, who's one of my dogs that I really I like deeply in the league. With Oprah
Yeah.
Winfrey and Prince Harry came out with a documentary 2 years ago called "The Me You Can't See," and in that documentary they
Mm.
followed me in my work with in the NBA. And from that,
Oh,
a
really?
number of people began to kind of engage in my work. And one that engaged was the publisher that published my book, reached out. Hey, I think there's something here to what I've watched in this documentary. There may be a book.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, we talked about discernment earlier. I had said when I started
Hmm.
my PhD, I want to write a book. And part of me thought, all right, I'm going to attack it and go get it and figure it out. But then I
Yeah.
said, no, let the book come find you. It'll be better if it finds you. So just be still, do what you're
Hmm.
doing, and let the book find you. Well, the book came to find me because I just kind of did
Yeah.
what I was supposed to do or what came my way. and it found me. But that inspiration kind of built over time as I began to do therapeutic support. Then I started doing work in the NBA. It ended up finding me, but I think that's what inspired me to write the book. How am I doing?
I like it. And I want to come back to that, but I want to continue the conversation essentially in the direction of like, well, who is it for, right? Is it,
Mm-hmm.
because you listed a bunch of people. Is it for athletes? Is it for, executives, for entrepreneurs? Who is the book supposed to serve?
Yeah, and I would say all of it that you named, plus a whole plethora of others. I think the
Yeah.
book is great
Yeah,
for
man.
athletes because I think that athletes have been sold a bill of goods that they should be something. Here's what you should be. Oh my God, that he started in fourth grade, man. Look at him on the basketball court. Oh man, he's going to be. So other
Mhm.
people fed into you. Oh my God, I think you'll be great at it. And then we hear it and say, well,
Yeah.
maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. So we attack being that and we end
Mhm.
up being pretty good at it. But we didn't take the time to develop, all right, I think I'm great at that. I'm going to do that. But what are the other parts of me? Right? I think that we have a
Mhm.
multitude of parts that live within us. Part of me is Corey the
Yeah.
therapist. Part of me is Corey that works in the NBA. Part of me is Corey that is a PhD, right? So part of me is a father. Part of me is a husband, right? So recognizing all of those parts and understanding what feeds me. What do I love about being who I am? What do I struggle with? So I think this book doesn't exclude, I don't think it's as good for that group or as that. If you're an individual
Yeah.
and you seek to better know yourself, the book will serve you.
Yeah. That's good, man. So I'm assuming that book has a lot of questions that
Oh
would have somebody
yeah.
go deeper. That's usually
Oh
the best books.
yes.
So,
So when you say that, so I'm gonna ask you a question. In your life,
yeah.
it's in the book. It's one of the lead questions. Who knows you best,
Okay.
Anthony? Who knows you best in your life?
Me.
Thank you.
And
No,
besides me?
thanks. Stop
Oh,
right there.
oh,
So I'll tell you, yeah, you got
yeah.
something special about your movement. 98% of the people that I ask that question begin with, or my mom, or my wife,
Mm,
or my best friend. Very few people answer first, me. That's the only
mm,
answer. Anthony, there's things that your
yeah.
wife know that no one else knows about you. But there are also things that your
True.
friends know that your wife don't know about you, and she'll never know, and
Very true.
and you ain't gonna tell her.
Hmm.
So that means every
Yeah.
person in our life has a part of understanding who we are, but no one has the full story except us.
Mm,
I know myself
hmm.
better than anyone else. I got another question that's in the book. Do you love
Yeah.
to win? Which one describes you more? You love to win or you hate to lose?
Hmm. I think I hate to
Why?
lose, man, because I think winning is very short lived, and the aspect of like losing is this thing where like winning can be framed multiple different ways. In my opinion, like you can win in different areas, but winning isn't always this thing. And I've been a winner, and it's like cool, right? But I more so don't like to lose because that's a feeling I have that connects to more of the self than I think it needs to. So I think personally, I don't like the feeling of being a loser when I look at my life. Whereas I could be a winner, and it doesn't have to be your version of winning. It could be multiple
Mm-hmm.
different levels.
So it sounds like you could be driven. Some people are driven to avoid that negativity. I'm gonna do everything so I don't get that in my life. Others are driven.
Yeah,
The driving aspect is my pursuit of win. That's for me. I'm a love to win
yeah,
guy. I'm pursuing the win. It
gotcha.
feels so good to win that I'm gonna dump everything I can in pursuit of that win. And I'll deal with the losses, and I don't see anything really as a loss anyway, because Nelson Mandela said, "In
Yeah,
life, we never lose. We either win or we learn. There ain't no losing."
yep,
So I think that
hmm,
how we see the world can be described in that question. No, there's not a right or wrong
yeah.
there,
So
but I think it tells us about who we
yeah,
are.
no, it's a difference.
So, do you
Yeah,
have a
that
sacred
definitely is.
space in your life? A sacred space that just this is my space.
Like
However you
physical
define
space.
it, however you describe it.
Yeah, man. I think that my sacred space. It's be weird. It's gonna sound odd. Sacred space is in an
Yeah,
airplane.
there you go. And you spend a lot of time.
It's just for me. I spend a lot of time on a plane, but it's not. It's not that I have to go on a plane because I got to get to that place. But it's a place where I'm able to be in a space where usually nobody knows me, I can be present with myself without having to worry about distractions, and I can be disconnected from the business of the world that steals my mind in
Mm.
place I don't think it needs to, whether it's a billboard or some audio on the radio or the TV, right? So I'm just there present. So I can be in a space where I get to be with Anthony and do work or be creative or just be at peace when no one
Yeah,
can
I
pull at
like
me.
that. I think that we should know our sacred spaces. We need to know what they are
Mm,
and visit and revisit those sacred spaces when decision making is coming our way. Um,
mm,
but I don't think too often we take the time to really tune in and say, all right, so what is my sacred space? The book will ask you to do that. I have a sacred space. It's a
mm,
chocolate covered, big, huge leather chair in the center of our home that
mm.
everyone knows. That's Pop's
Nice.
chair. So Pops works the angles
Yeah.
of where our family's headed from that chair. It's very
Mm,
sacred to me. So it's starting to be worn
yeah.
down, and my wife knows, don't you get rid of that chair. That's my space, right?
I leave it there.
So those are a few things that the
Yeah.
book asks us to be considerate of that we may not be considerate of on a consistent basis.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. It's almost like you're talking about being presently aware of your
Yeah, it's not.
present. Because these are things where there's nobody that's like really paying
Yeah, I
attention
would
to it
say it's
deeper
not
than.
almost like it. It's fully like that. That is what the book is asking us.
Uh,
Be present with that presence. Sit with the presence of who we
yeah,
are. I asked the question of, do you understand the essence of who you are as a person? What is the makeup of and the
yeah,
essence of who I am when I move through spaces? My essence almost precedes me. Before I say much, you'll get
mm,
a sense of something about I gotta talk to I'm gonna talk to him. Why? Because that essence may
yeah.
draw
It draws
you
you in.
in. But are we aware of that essence?
Yeah,
And do we like it? And do we want to change it? Right? So
yeah. What if you find out that you aren't living in
yeah.
that? What if I mean you're living your life and you go, man, all
Yep.
this is my
Yep.
essence. I'm aware of it now, but I'm not that person. Or like here's for example, I tell my son the best time to set the tone for who you are is day one. He's going to college. I said the first day you go out there, think about who you want to be 4 years from now and be that guy day one because for them, they're not going to know any different. It's your
Mm.
first introduction to who you are. For you, it might feel out of character, out of skin, but then it's easier because they're going to hold you to that standard as opposed to you being who you are, let's say at a low level and trying to climb. It's like awkward. So I think a lot of people are in life right now where at this bottom, we'll call it from
Yep.
where they really want to be. And knowing now where their essence is, where they want it to be, it says, oh, what if I get looked at differently? What if I get, cast out or ostracized? How do you have somebody
So
navigate
what
that
you
little internal
just
journey?
described is a concept in the psychological realm called negative self-talk. Negative conversations
Interesting.
move in an echo chamber in our head. Negative. Come on, man. Why'd you do that?
Mm,
You're so stupid. You made another mistake. And if this echo chamber is full of negativity, it pushes out the opportunity for the echo chamber to be full of positivity. It pushes it out because it's full of
true,
that negative. But you won't know what to do with it if you're not first aware of it. This is the concept, Ant,
true.
that we got to be aware of it before we can make a move on anything. I got to be aware. So now the book is saying, hey, let's be aware of that. You do whatever you want with it, but let's first be aware of it. And now we can start to make a shift. So you tell your son, hey, go in. That first day is really the opportunity to do some things. I describe it as the reinvention of ourselves when we go into new spaces. Nobody knows me. No one knows how I operate.
Hmm.
I could have been an introvert my first 18 years in my home and my high school, but now I'm going to put on the mask of extrovert sometimes because these people don't know me. And I start day one with that.
True.
Day one, you don't wait till day 27 being an introvert, and now all of a sudden you want to be an extrovert. So you get to reinvent who you have been if that's your choice. That's it again. But if you're not thinking and clear on who you are and aware, it's hard to do it because I'm not aware of what I like and dislike about who I am. It's really simple.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't
that's,
force it.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's
simple but not easy,
thus is
right? Simple
life.
but not
Life
easy.
is very tough, but
Yeah,
it ain't complex. It's not hard. It's not complex. It's really simple, but that don't mean it's easy.
yeah. No, man, it's almost a lot of it comes, and this is a word that I think people use a lot, and it gets a bad rap from being like soft, too soft, which is the
Mm.
word authentic. Your authentic self, right? You hear it a lot in the realm of we'll call it spiritual and healer, holistic people. But I was just watching this show called The Sandman, and I want to say episode 5 of The Sandman on Netflix. If anybody wants to go watch it, it's unsettling. It's not unsettling because it's gory, although there is blood within it. It's unsettling because what ends up happening is it's a guy removing all the facade and the filter of what people show up to in the world with the, oh, how you doing, handsome? And he goes, do you really think I'm handsome? Like he has a little ruby that makes her say, I don't. Well, why would you say that? Like all these dynamics of humanity, it's almost like having to strip this stuff away for people because you have this way you're living. But what I'm hearing is like to be you is to
Yeah.
be the authentic you, unashamed, and
Yes,
press that into the world.
unapologetic as well. You can be
Yeah, yeah,
unashamed
yeah.
and still be apologizing for who you are and how you see the world. Right? So how do we move
Hmm.
in a way that says, and I'm not apologizing for being Corey. You ain't gotta like it. It ain't and
Yeah,
you don't have to like how I move in this world, and I don't have to like how you move in this world.
yeah.
But as long as you like it and I like
Sure.
how I move, that's all that really matters. So one thing that I'm
Yeah,
thinking about with you, once you move to a certain level, this is tough to do. A question I would have for you is, so who advises you? In the book, I talk about the development of a supreme court. Those 3 to 5 people that we can turn to
mm,
that will be truth tellers. That will be, I'm going to spit it to you. You
yeah,
don't may not like it, but I'm going to spit it to you the way I think you need to hear it. So who advises
yeah,
you, Ant?
yeah. I
Ah,
got 3 people, man. I got my wife, I got my best friend Jason, and I
yeah.
got my oldest son. They my wife will come from a position of making statements to me that because I know where her heart's at, right? So she could say some things to me, and it's funny. She's the most abrasive of all 3. She's more like alpha and just plays with like, hey, you're looking fat right now, man. Like, oh, okay, hun,
Yeah.
love you too. So she'll do that. My best friend will come from a perspective outside of anything I know because my wife knows what I do, and she may tiptoe around what I do. I've known him since I was in the 3rd grade. We've been friends for a lifetime, literally. And so he can approach me in perspectives and areas that he gets it because he's a man, we'll call it. My son's perspective comes in because I'm highly aware of his logical ability to see the world as it is, but also the naivete to not have the rest of the world
Yeah.
as an adult filtered in. So I can hear him from a stance and go, okay, this is genuine without the
Hmm.
rest of the fluff around it. And I also want to know how a person that I care
Yeah.
that sees me because I never want to have a moment with my son because he's going to the world as an adult where he looks back and goes, oh, that's who my dad is as an adult. Because I've had that happen. I find people that I grew up, aunties, uncles, cousins, teachers, and you grow up and you see the world that they're in as that
Yeah.
person. You go, oh, that's who they were. Oof, I never want that to be some of my kids, and so I'm very communicative and I listen. And so those are the 3
Extremely
people that
important,
advise me.
right? And being intentional about when there are major things in our lives that we are struggling with, that we can turn to those truth tellers, and they'll say, "Hey, Dad, so you asked me the
Mhm.
question. You want me to tell you the truth, or you want me to give you a soft version? No, shoot it straight to me. I
Yeah,
want to hear what you
yeah,
think about this." Right. So what we recognize in those 3 that you have, if you ask them the same question, the same inquiry, there'll be a pattern from their answers that is probably telling you what's the best thing. That pattern will emerge. I think it's really
yep.
important.
Hmm. Yeah, it's actually something I do in one of our coaching programs. I have this thing called the shift method. It's the process I take people through to make an identity shift. It's the work I do. And one of the things we have called triad talks. It's based upon a framework that is then taken to a level of conversation in a very specific way that forces you to sit and shut up and listen to people tell you in ways you
Mhm.
don't want to hear but need to hear. And then you can't respond for 2 days, so the emotion can diminish, and then you can approach it from a logical stance. So what you're talking about is actually something I make people do, but it's one of the
Yes.
best things they've ever
Yes.
done
And because
sometimes.
what you're doing is you're making them do it through a process of intentionality. We're not going to by chance stumble into this. We're going to be
Yeah.
very intentional. The 2 day respite. No, you can't
Hmm.
discuss that. You got to sit with it. Yeah. So that means I got to stew
Hmm.
with, dang, they said this and I can't even reach back out and say nothing. Yeah. You got to be still. Sit with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
an interesting little thing, man. And then obviously, here's the thing: I'm not licensed as a therapist to do all these kind of things. It just was like common sense stuff that I said because I did this myself with hard conversations with people, and I found that it was like a little thing that worked for me. So I'm like, maybe somebody else could try it. So I did these things, and I'm not 100% going to sit here and say like it's the way that you should do
Yeah.
it or therapy or anything, but it works for some extent, and it's not all there, but I think that there's definitely some congruencies that I've seen between people doing the actions and having some
But I would
growth and
say this:
success in the
don't
back end.
diminish
So in the
your
work that
process. I don't care if you licensed or not. If you found a process that works, don't diminish it by saying, "Well, I'm not a therapist."
I work.
You ain't got to be. Our shift is a process that has
Yeah,
worked
true.
for you. Others have seen it work for them, and
Mhm.
I ain't finna diminish the process because it's a process that works.
Yeah.
That's important.
Oh yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't take from it. It's more of saying like because you obviously I get in the world. People are like, well, I'm a doctor, like you are. I'm a therapist. What
Mm.
schooling do you have? It's like, well, I don't have the schooling in it, but it works. So I don't diminish it. I still put it out in the
Yeah.
world. I love guiding people through it. But if it gets to this point of like, where's the doctoral stuff? I'm like, I don't have all that. All I know is I have this person and this person and this person and this person, and they all did it. And we got people that are
Mm.
married. We got people that have solved issues with their brothers and
Mm.
haven't talked to them for like 15 years. They're now be able to go and visit and hang out with them. We got people that have been able to get like lost weight, build businesses. It's not that I may not
But
have
and
all the data, but it's hidden in
I
there,
would tell
and
you,
that's where you met.
just based on what I'm hearing you say, you've got all kinds of evidence-based practice, research-based stuff that you're utilizing. You just didn't go through that process, but there's still research behind it.
Yeah.
That as you're talking, research is moving in
Mhm.
my head. I'm like, oh, that's cognitive behavioral. Oh, he's doing that. There's stuff behind it
Yeah.
that would prove it. So
Yeah. That's true. That's cool, man. So, what are your hopes for the book, man? You got this book out in the world. People are getting it. Obviously, it's helping even the publisher, right? So what are the hopes for this thing? If you were to, take a snapshot
yeah, I
of the
hope
world
that
five
people
years
get
from
it in
now.
their hands and get and draw and build the opportunity to get to better know who they are, and then moving to better show
Mhm.
up in the world as that individual, becoming more deeply aware of who they are, and utilizing that knowledge, turning and flipping that into wisdom and using that as they move through the world. That's what I hope that the book will do and provide for
Mhm.
others that get a chance to read it. And we'll see where it goes from there. So I have no expectation for the book. It's my first book. I think it'll do well, but I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
But I know what though. I put
Mhm.
my stuff out there
Yeah.
the
None of
way
us
I
know.
saw it, and I didn't wonder what everybody else thought about it.
Right.
I'm gonna put my version out, and people do with it what they choose.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, man. I think there's a part to it. There's obviously school of thoughts. There's people that are like, no, you got to force it and push it. And I can feel from you, it's one of those things like it was from my last book was it kind of came together. I wasn't even planning to publish what I was writing down, but someone introduced me to a publisher. I'm like, cool, let's put it out. And it became this thing where like I want what's supposed
Yes,
to happen with it to happen with it. And
that's
it
right.
may not be
That's
in
right,
my
and that's
control.
okay. And that's okay.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yes,
Not that it's
sir.
okay. Maybe it's supposed to be that way. Maybe it's supposed to be somewhere. I had people post a thing from like New Zealand the other day, like taking
Yeah.
screenshots. Like, I don't even know how you
Cool.
found out about it out there, but cool. Like, it
That's
takes
right.
off and what it's supposed to do. So, where
So
can people
it's going
grab
to
the
be
book?
at any of your booksellers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I mean, it's going to be kind of everywhere. How am I doing? Just Google it. You can find it in
Yeah.
all kinds of spaces, and hopefully people get benefit from it. So you can find it anywhere. You can go on any of my
Right.
handles like Instagram, Dr. Corey Yeager. You can go on to any of those social media outlets. You can look up Dr. Corey Yeager, and it'll be all over the place. Yeah,
I like it. I
yeah.
like it. All right. Final question. You ready for it? Here we go. Someone asked me this one time, and I ask everybody now. Here's the question. What promise did God make to the world when he created you?
This is going to be a cat that will be in your corner if you engage with him. Is you won't have to wait a long time. Most of you people wait a long time to figure out they can really trust someone. This is going to be a cat from the beginning. Don't waste a lot
Hmm.
of time wondering if you can trust him, because that cat ain't gonna go nowhere once he shows up. That's a promise. Not a dance around. In the NBA, I work with high level players. They go to different teams. I stay connected. Just because you go to a different team, my connection with you didn't leave. So that is how I see the world. So I think that's the
Yeah.
promise.
I like it, man. It's a good one. I have yet to have that one
There
in
you go. There you
330-ish
go.
episodes, so it's a solid one.
Appreciate it.
Well done, man. Well, thank you. I appreciate
No,
anything
no,
else you
good
want to say to the
opportunity,
people
man. It
before we
was
sign
cool
off.
to sit down and spit with you. Good luck in all your ventures, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, same to you. Those of you guys out in the world tuning in, thank you for hanging out with us. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to come hang with us. So thank you. If you found some kind of value in what we shared, what we talked about, share that with somebody you know. Sometimes, like we talk about, you can plant a seed, but you don't have to water it. So maybe you could let us water that seed and also share it out in the world at a wide. copy, paste, put in your feed somewhere. You never know who can benefit from it. And I would please, like a humble ask, you rate, review, and do all the fun stuff with the show, man. That's it. Outside of that, as always, make the most of your shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Corey Yeager signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning into the Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.